Hello and welcome. Hello and welcome. You're watching HT in Depth, and my name is Aisha Varma. Climate change isn't real. That's the line they've repeated for decades on podiums and headlines, through smirks on social media. But the planet, it's no longer waiting to argue. The temperature is rising. The ice is gone. The oceans are angry, and the skies are filled with smoke. From scorched forests in Canada to flooded streets in Dubai to heat waves baking Europe, Asia, and America, the myth of denial is burning alive. This isn't just weather. This is a warning. This is what happens when science is ignored and the truth is too hot to handle. The European heat wave, which ended last week, wasn't just a sweaty inconvenience. It's estimated that 2,300 people lost their lives to heat-linked causes. And here's the plot twist. Researchers from Imperial College London and the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine say 2/3 of those deaths are directly linked to, wait for it, climate change. That's not just hot air. It's science, and it's based on a 10-day scorcher from June 23rd to July 2nd this year. So what's the big picture? Climate change isn't just making summers hotter, it's making them longer. Think of it as summer on a never-ending loop, but without the ice cream. Earlier, we spoke with Matthew Capucci, an author and meteorologist, about this. Listen in.
That with the background warming climate, we're seeing a little bit extra in the way of heat. In other words, we're pushing regular heat events towards record territory. It would be like if I was playing basketball. Every so often, I'd probably get a basket. I'd get a slam dunk. But if the floor was rising, I was suddenly a little bit taller and I'd get more slam dunks. I have an easier time reaching the basket. Same thing here. The atmosphere is warm, but it's getting a little bit warmer, so we're pushing those events a little bit higher. And there will be winners in climate change. If you're in Russia, odds are you love climate change. If you're in Greenland, if you're in Canada, you probably like climate change because you're seeing warmer conditions, better for agriculture. If you live in the mid-latitudes, you might not like climate change. You're seeing a little bit more in the way of severe weather, more hurricane activity in terms of high-end hurricanes. You're seeing more in the way of flooding, and you might not like climate change. So there will be winners and losers of climate change. Climate change isn't necessarily an all bad thing. It's simply that the conditions are changing and our infrastructure is not built to accommodate those changing conditions.
Scientists are unanimous. Heat waves are getting hotter, more frequent, and longer. In Europe, summer is no longer a 3-month fling. Thanks to climate change, cities like Athens and Tirana are now hosting summer for up to 5 months a year, according to a study by Climate Resilience for All. Now, this study looked at temperatures from 2019 to 2023 across 85 cities worldwide. Why exactly are longer summers a problem? Prolonged heat can overwhelm and shut down the body's natural cooling system, leading to heat exhaustion. Think fatigue, dizziness, nausea, and in severe cases, heat stroke, confusion, seizures, organ failure. Basically, your body's SOS signal. High temperatures mean more sweating, which means more dehydration, especially risky for kids and the elderly. Your heart has to work overtime to keep you cool, raising the risk of heart attacks and strokes. Hot, humid air and pollution, it's bad news for anyone with asthma or breathing issues. Chronic heat can mess with your kidneys, increasing the risk of stones and even failure. This isn't just Europe's crisis, the planet's. A global study by World Weather Attribution, Climate Central, and the Red Cross Climate Center found that from May 2024 to May 2025, climate change at least doubled the number of extreme heat days in 195 out of 247 countries and territories. The World Meteorological Organization confirmed in March that 2024 was the hottest year on record, and the first time that Earth's surface was.
It is anarchy in parts of Spain, France and the UK right now as migrant gangs from Northern Africa and the Middle East. It is anarchy in parts of Spain, France and the UK right now as migrant gangs from Northern Africa and the Middle East violently try to take over and intimidate innocent people. Spain is currently in crisis with ongoing clashes between migrant gangs and Spaniards following the violent bashing of an elderly man in Torre Pacheco. And again in Spain, a man with a baby was callously threatened by a knife-wielding gang for simply walking down the street. And in the tourist mecca of Barcelona, the cobblestone laneways are no longer filled with people enjoying their vacations, but with hundreds of Muslim men chanting. This commentator sent a stark warning, saying, if you wanted to visit Barcelona, Spain, now it's looking like Islamabad, Pakistan. France is also in a migration mess, with violence running rampant in the streets, like at the Fête de la Musique last month, where hundreds of young people were stabbed with syringes and property set alight. Online commentators were in shock with the footage, with this person saying, "This is France? This looks like Ghana, not France." And 2 women were left injured and terrified after their car was surrounded and destroyed by rioters following the PSG Champions League victory. In the UK, the situation is even more dire, with daily occurrences of violent bashings and stabbings by migrant groups on innocent local victims. Knife crime is at an all-time high, with people being randomly targeted on the streets.
Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Give the play back to you, mate. Let's go! Let's go! You're not going to use the play. You're not going to use the play. You're not going to use the play.
Women's advocacy group Women's Safety Initiative is speaking up about the issue to raise awareness about the dire state of play in the UK at the moment.
The silent impact of mass migration on women's daily lives in the UK is a stark reminder of the point that we have got to in this country. A country that has chosen multiculturalism over assimilation, ultimately leading to what we have now. Parallel communities with limited cross-cultural understanding. Let's take a look at Borsley Green, one of the most dangerous...
1%. 70,000 phones were stolen from people in this city last year alone. There's a rape every hour, sexual offences are through the roof, and it's not just the crime that bothers me. London has also become a symbol for liberal progressives of how they'd like to see the rest of the country. But do you really want the rest of the country to look like London? Hundreds of thousands of people who don't speak English, our national language, hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants, hate marches on the streets of our capital city every week, pro-Hamas, pro-Hezbollah hate marches.
And all of this stark evidence and footage of countries overrun by violence and division, yet their governments and leadership do absolutely nothing. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer seems to be more concerned about protecting the illegal migrants than protecting his own people. Reform UK's Zia Yusuf slammed the Prime Minister for his incompetence on the issue.
It's all garbage. No one's listening, which is why his approval ratings have collapsed at historic speed. Look, there's north of 1.2 million people here in this country illegally already. They are crossing the channel illegally at record numbers, right? So things aren't not improving fast enough. They are getting demonstrably worse every single week. And the only way we're going to solve this problem, Mike, and restore a social contract that is hanging by a thread in this country is by deporting every single one of those 1.2 million people who are here. We need to be standing up enormous amounts of detention capacity. We need huge numbers of charter flights. We need return agreements with countries to take these people back. And if they don't take them back, we need to be doing things like stopping issuing visas altogether. We need to be scrapping the foreign aid.
And Starmer's latest humiliation, his deal with Emmanuel Macron of France over illegals, which commentators believe will have absolutely no impact on fixing the current issue.
As far as their main kind of policies go, one of them they bang on about because of that ridiculous, ludicrous summit Le Summit, as we called it here, between Emmanuel Macron and Keir Starmer. You know, they seem to think that finding some form of middle ground and finding an agreement on stopping the migrants is going to stop them. Well, it isn't. You know, they've now got the idea, Yvette Cooper has, that they're going to send some people back to Iraq. You know, I'll believe it when I see it. Nothing of what they do works.
No one is going to go back to Iraq because even if they have a returns deal, the European Convention of Human Rights in its court will interfere and prevent that deal from being enacted.
And in a shock move, French reports indicate that France is now giving all Palestinians in Gaza the opportunity to apply for asylum. This commentator revealed the news, saying, a French court has ruled that all people from Gaza can apply for asylum in France. That is 2.1 million people that can come to Europe. Not only that, because of freedom of movement, they could potentially travel anywhere in the EU once inside France. Sounds like a bad idea. And whilst the leaders of Europe refuse to do anything, the people have taken things into their own hands to send a message that this will not be tolerated.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org. I'm Mimi Goodman with Juan Gonzalez. Democratic lawmakers are blasting the horrific conditions in Florida's new immigration jail in the Everglades, which Republican politicians are calling Alligator Alcatraz. After visiting the jail Saturday, the Democratic lawmakers say it should be shut down. The Miami Herald found hundreds of prisoners at the Everglades prison have no criminal records or charges, contradicting claims by the Trump administration that the people held there are the worst of the worst. Meanwhile, critics have called the facility by other names, including concentration camp, internment camp, Gator Grift, a reference to how the Texas-based company IRG Global Emergency Management gave $10,000 to Florida's Republican Party just days before it received a no-bid $1.1 million contract with Florida to, quote, provide operational support services in support of migration efforts in the state, unquote. Dropsite News and others report funds from FEMA's Shelter and Services Program are being used to fund the so-called Alligator Alcatraz jail, estimated to cost at least $608 million. Florida's Republican Attorney General, James Othmeyer, a longtime ally of Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, has been called the mastermind of the jail. The publisher of Florida Politics wrote, quote, in Othmeyer found his own Stephen Miller, the far-right immigration hardliner and White House senior advisor. Attorney General Othmeyer was appointed to that position to replace Ashley Moody, who took the Senate seat of Marco Rubio when he became Secretary of State. Meanwhile, Miller has urged politicians in Republican states to build their own versions of Alligator Alcatraz.
We want every governor of a red state, and if you're watching tonight, pick up the phone, call DHS, work with us to build facilities in your state so that we can get the illegals out, we can get the criminals out.
This comes as Trump's budget bill reportedly includes a provision that allocates $3.5 billion to eligible states for immigration enforcement and detention. For more, we're joined by Florida Democratic Congressmember Maxwell Frost, among a group of dozens of Democratic lawmakers who went to the jail Saturday. We're also joined by Claire Healy, Esserman Investigative Fellow for the Miami Herald. The latest stories headlined exclusive. Hundreds of Alligator Alcatraz have no criminal charges, Miami Herald learns. And is your family member or client at Alligator Alcatraz? We obtained a list. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Congressmember Frost, let's start with you. Talk about the trip you took on Saturday with dozens of Democratic lawmakers from Florida. What did you see?
So originally, we actually planned an unannounced trip. And, I've done a couple of these ICE detention facility visits. Them being unannounced is very important because you see things for how they are. Somehow, word got to the state that we were coming, and so they issued us an invitation at the same time and same date we were going to go anyway. We still decided to go to see what's going on in there, and we saw important conditions, a lot of crowding, 32 male individuals per cage. These people are being caged, 3 toilets per area, and the drinking water, it comes from the toilet apparatus in the cell. Not only that, but there is not enough resources and not really an ability for them to be able to speak with their legal counsel or lawyers. There's not a really clear way on how legal counsel can go to the facility, meet with them. That's one of the questions I asked over and over again. I received the phone number in an email. I publicly gave out the email at a press conference right after, and now lawyers are calling me saying, Maxwell, the email's bouncing back. It's not working. And so there's a deliberate attempt here, it seems, to keep these immigrants and keep these people from their right of due process, of course, but also their right of even being able to speak with their counsel and their family. We've heard of the toilets not working. Yes, there's 3 in each cage, but sometimes 2 of them don't work. We actually heard a story of one night when one of the toilets backed up and started spewing essentially feces around the cage, and it wasn't until hours later till they were moved to another one. So it's things like this. Now, I will tell you, we heard directly from one of the lawyers who spoke with someone the night before we got there. Magically, they got their first shower. Magically, they got a meal that was a lot better than it's been before. That's part of the reason why these visits from members of Congress and oversight are so important, because it keeps the people running this internment camp on their toes. And so I'll be back at a time of my own choosing, a date of my own choosing. I don't need permission from Ron DeSantis to choose when I want to go, because it is a federal facility operated by the state. They made as much as that clear when I was inside of it this past Saturday.
And Congressman, who are the security personnel? Are they state officials, ICE officials, private security? What were you able to tell about that?
Here's the other thing. It's essentially a private detention facility. Now, no one will call it that, but when I pulled up, the people who came up to me to check my ID, they're from a private company, Delta Foxtrot Solutions Incorporated. Then I go inside. I actually asked this gentleman, because he had a badge. It looked like a police department badge, and I squinted, looked at it. It had the name of a company. I asked him, "Is that your company?" And he looked at me and he said, "Well, Congressman, we're a private company. I'm not law enforcement. I'm not required to tell you anything about myself." So I park, assuming, well, maybe they're hiring third.
Ongoing in Doha. The U.S. is backing a 60-day ceasefire with a phased release of hostages, but significant gaps remain between Israeli and Hamas positions. The official death toll in Gaza has topped 58,000, though it's expected to be far higher with people buried in the rubble, as Israeli forces continue to target Palestinians seeking aid. On Sunday, an Israeli missile strike killed at least 10 Palestinians, including 6 children, at a water distribution point in Nuseirat refugee camp. At least 17 others were wounded in the blast. Israel's also attacked a market in Gaza City on Sunday, killing at least 17 people. According to the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, nearly 800 people have been killed in Gaza while attempting to access aid just since late May, when the U.S. and Israeli-backed so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, or GHF, took over most aid distribution sites. On Saturday, at least 27 Palestinians were killed, more than 180 injured when Israeli forces opened fire on people waiting for humanitarian aid at a distribution site near Rafah. This is Palestinian paramedic Hassan Omran.
Today, more than 150 injuries and more than 20 martyrs around the aid distribution centers. Most of the gunshot injuries we see are in the head or the torso. The Israeli occupation purposely kills and annihilates people. The occupation uses this policy to carry out mass killings by calling on people to get their daily food. Then when these people get there, they get killed in cold blood.
The injured from Saturday's massacre were taken to Nasser Hospital in Khan Yunis. Early this morning, Israeli airstrikes wounded and killed several people. This is Itamad Abu Daka, the aunt of a child injured in the strikes.
They live in Azda. I don't know. What matters is that they are martyred, torn to pieces. I don't know anything about what happened. Thank God. Thank God. What is this child's fault? Was he carrying a weapon? Was he fighting them? Was he fighting? Is he a fighter?
This morning's injured were taken to Nasser Hospital, the largest functioning hospital in Gaza, facing fuel shortages and a widening Israeli offensive in the area. We go now to Nasser Hospital, to Gaza, to speak with Dr. Tarek Lubani, an emergency room medical doctor who has been volunteering in Nasser Hospital in Gaza since June. He's the medical director of the GLIA project, an organization creating open-source medical devices for low-resource communities. In 2018, Dr. Lubani was among 19 medics shot by the Israeli military in Gaza. In October 2023, Dr. Lubani was arrested for nonviolently protesting, calling for a ceasefire. He's also a Palestinian refugee. Dr. Lubani, welcome back to Democracy Now! Today from Nasser Hospital. Can you describe the injuries, the fatalities that you're seeing?
The injuries are every manner of terrible injuries for a doctor to see. So one of the things that we've grown very accustomed to is, for example, bombings and crush injuries in Gaza. I've been working here for 15 years. However, every day brings a new type of severe and terrible injuries. For example, yesterday, there were gunshot wounds to the head. 2 or 3 days ago, we were noticing especially young men and boys were getting gunshots to the groin. And so every day seems to be a new exercise in the depths of human depravity in terms of targeting men, boys, women, and children. Especially in terms of the youngest children. I think every doctor who operates and works in Palestine will tell you that that's the most jarring, the most terrible part of our job is just the war on children on every level.
Can you talk about the injuries you're seeing as a result of people lining up to get aid from the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, GHF, that shadowy Israeli-U.S. so-called aid organization that so many international aid organizations have condemned? Talk about what you've seen there and the AP investigation saying they releasing video showing the opening fire on the aid seekers.
There was no surprise to me when I saw the AP video. It was exactly what patients and Palestinians have been telling me and have been telling us for the past month and a half. Since GHF really started operating, almost immediately when they started operating, they started massacring civilians. The injury patterns, there are two major injury types. One of them is sniper-style shots, people who are shot very clear, deliberately in the head, especially, or in some other part of the body like the groin. And then the other one is where they just unload some semi-automatic or automatic machine, like a machine gun or a light machine gun, into a crowd of people, where essentially what they do is they open fire on these heavily, densely packed groups of people and end up not just killing and wounding the people who are seeking aid, but people even up to a kilometer away, especially when they're using the heavier weapons. As well, the Israeli army is clearly a part of the massacres. Many of the massacres happen by Israelis, and many of them happen by the mercenaries who pretend to be humanitarian aid workers for the GHF. And the Israeli army will also shoot at collections of Palestinians, will fire on tents close to them. So we see all of these types of injuries as well. For example, people who are laying in bed because it's often late at night or early in the morning, who then get shot because of the rampant and wanton firing of bullets. What I end up seeing, like I said, is a lot of head injuries, people who come in essentially brain dead. Even with the best care, they may not survive. However, with the massive shortages, we have shortages of fuel, which means that we have shortages of oxygen. We also have shortages of equipment, which means that we don't have basic supplies to treat our patients. Yesterday, when we had one of these massacres, not an aid massacre, but a tent massacre, yet another new form of depravity we didn't know before this war. And I was on the ground trying to intubate, to provide advanced assistance to a patient, while I was on my stomach on the floor and the patient was on his back on the floor. So what we...
Heartache and disbelief in Texas as the nation's deadliest flash flood event in nearly 50 years took so many by surprise.
He went out the back door, and then the water swept him away, and he got caught in the outdoor kitchen.
Cars were floating away with the lights on. You can hear honking. And there was like not one or two, but there were dozens of vehicles just floating away.
We look at local officials facing questions over forecasts and warning systems. President Trump's signature spending agenda is now signed into law. How will it affect Americans?
It's really kind of a big moment, I think, in our social policy history, that the federal government says, yes, saving and investing should start as early as birth for every kid in America.
And as the Department of Justice finds no foul play in Jeffrey Epstein's death, the MAGA base and some top right-wing media figures believe there's a cover-up. Hello and welcome to PBS News Weekly. I'm Laura Barone-Lopez. Tragedy in Texas Hill Country this week as sudden massive flooding over the July 4th holiday killed more than 100 people, destroyed hundreds of homes, and left lives forever changed. As search and recovery crews continue their work, officials expect the death toll to keep growing. Special correspondent Christopher Booker has our report from Kerr County, Texas, about the latest efforts on the ground.
In the heart of Texas Hill Country, football coach Tate Damasco has found a way to give back.
Who wants to eat?
Through the nonprofit Mercy Chefs, Damasco is delivering hot meals to victims of last weekend's flooding.
The first thing was, oh my gosh, this is where I live, look at it. The next thing was, how are we ever going to get past all this?
One of the families receiving help is Martha and Miles Murayama.
I jumped up and came to the door, and he looked out, and the water was already above the windows.
Really?
So he went out the back door, and then the water swept him away, and he got caught in the outdoor kitchen.
Your husband?
Yeah.
While Martha's husband Miles survived, nearly everything in her home did not. But for now, they're leaning on their community.
We've been blessed, and we've had a lot of help from our church. All the guys that have been out and helping us. Day one, my daughter and I were ripping out floors, and we had some help from some friends and started cleaning up.
Back at the Mercy Chef's kitchen, volunteers from across the country have prepared more than 10,000 meals since Saturday.
Thank you guys, love y'all, appreciate you being with us.
Chef Gary LeBlanc founded the organization.
We hear so many of the stories. The ones that really hit me are the first responders that are in here, the search and rescue teams that come in to eat, and they sit, they take a few bites, and they put their head down in their hands, and then you ask them, how are you? And they just look up with this 1,000-yard away stare, and they say, you know, I've just seen things today that I can never unsee.
Search teams are now using heavy equipment to peel away layers of tree and debris along the river, and finding more victims, like veteran Bill Venus, who served in the Army for 33 years, or 21-year-old Joyce Catherine Baden, who was trapped in a house along the Guadalupe River on July 4th. These satellite images show the scale of devastation along the Guadalupe River. It's in this low-lying part of Kerr County that's lined with campgrounds like Camp Mystic, where just 2 days before the floods, state inspectors reportedly signed off on a disaster plan. The details of that plan are unclear. Local officials continued to dodge questions about how and when the county alerted residents about the floods. According to local reports, an area firefighter requested a code red warning as floodwaters rose in the early hours of July 4th. But today, officials declined to give a timeline for when the county's code red system was activated.
We're going to get that